My mom taught me to sell at a spaza shop. She ran a hair salon. I pretty much learned entrepreneurship from my mom's.
Umntu ngumntu ngabantu. That on your own, you can't really do it. You need the support of those around you.
You will have a network of people, a network of communities, and a society that will make sure that you count.
Good evening and welcome to tonight's session of SAITA Straight Talk. SAITA Straight Talk is a series of panel discussions where we talk about all the important things that affects not only our communities, but particular focus is on our informal traders. SAITA Straight Talk is powered by SAITA, the South African Informal Traders Alliance, and we do this live session twice a week, every week. And I promise you in every session that we have panelists that really have expertise in the fields that they're talking about. Now, February is the month of love, they say. And a lot of people say it's just a money-making scam. However, we cannot neglect that for a lot of us in South Africa, it is the one day where we take away all our boundaries and we really show people what we think the world has taught us about what romantic love is all about. To show in a not so physical way, but we know that the physical end is really the reason why we do what we do. It's in the flowers, it's in the chocolates, it's in the songs that we send our partners, or the little note that you get on your desk without a name on that says, "Be my Valentine." When we talk about all the beauty, the romance, the rose-colored glasses, it's also for us to look at the important things, the things that we say that comes with responsibility. And tonight, that is what we're going to be focusing on. Because any physical romantic relationship has consequences. And tonight we're going to talk about some of those consequences. And I have ladies who are experts in their fields, and it's so great to be talking about love tonight. The consequences of love, and the consequences of love are always not so nice. But it's a panel of ladies. Dumisile, welcome. Welcome to SAITA Straight Talk.
Thank you.
I'd like you to please take 30 seconds and just introduce yourself. Tell us where you're from and give our audience an introduction to who you are.
Okay, as you've mentioned, thank you so much for having me on the show. My name is Dumisile Vanessa Masego. I'm a girl from Davidton on the Ekurhuleni side of Johannesburg, east of Johannesburg. I'm currently employed by the National Institute for Communicable Diseases as the laboratory manager at the Center for HIV and STIs.
Thank you, Dumisile. Luleka, welcome to SAITA Straight Talk.
I'd
like you to do the same, please.
Okay, my name is Luleka Thabo. I work in Cape Town, specifically in Khayelitsha and Gugulethu. I work for Love Life. I work as a programs coordinator, and we work solely with young people between the ages of 10 up until 24, around the social issues as well.
Wonderful. Luleka, I want to share a joke with you. And it's a joke that emphasizes the silos that we have in South Africa, particular to language. So many years ago, when Love Life started their marketing campaign, they had huge billboards up that said Theta. And I was driving to work one day with a fair colleague of mine, and we saw this billboard. And I'm definitely not making it out that I knew a lot more than she does. I'm just here to show you how we can bridge boundaries if we start engaging with each other. And she looked at this billboard and she said to me, "What is this love life with a there the campaign?" And I looked at her, I said to her, "What are you talking about?" And she said to me, "That billboard, it says there the." And then I realized, and it was only because I was involved in the whole theta. And I said to her, "It's theta. It means let's talk about this."
Yes.
So when you for me it's important to say that when we engage with other people, it's important to understand where they come from, because there was this billboard that Love Life thought was speaking to everybody, but it missed an entire community because it said there the, and people didn't know that it was theta. Let's talk about it. And tonight is really going to be one of those nights where we're going to be talking about it. So we know about love. And we know that for a lot of us, love is not just companionship. It goes into the physical sense. It goes into sexuality. So apart from that, because a lot of us think that I haven't had a partner for the last year, and suddenly I get an Instagram post that likes me, and somebody slides into my DMs and somebody says, "Can we talk?" We know we are in a life where a lot of people are meeting each other on not only social media, but we've got a lot of dating sites.
Yes.
But there's an implication to all of that. I mean, this is only now. Before that, people used to meet each other, and they would have intimate relationships with each other. And then tomorrow or the week after, suddenly there's an itch or a burn. And I think, oh, what is that? What is that? So I'm going to ask one of you ladies to please put up your hand and explain to me, what is sexually transmitted diseases?
Okay, should I go first?
Yes, please, go first.
Okay, so we prefer to use the term now sexually transmitted infections. And as we proceed with our conversation, you will understand why it's now infections instead of diseases.
Okay, so it's not STDs anymore, it's STIs.
No,
now.
STIs, yes.
Oh, you
yes,
see
that's
how the world has changed.
Yes, dramatically so. So these are infections that are acquired through sexual contact. And this sexual contact could include vaginal sex, anal sex, and even oral sex. And they can be caused by bacteria, parasites, or even viruses. And it includes HIV. So I know sometimes when we talk about STIs, people would tend to think that HIV is separate, but it includes HIV because HIV can also be transmitted sexually. So I will stop there and not elaborate further.
I'm not
and
going to allow you. I'm not going to
Yes.
allow you to stop there. I'll tell you why I'm not going to allow you to stop there.
Yes.
Because we're sitting in this pandemic, and we've had more than one variant. And just last week, the news was running amok saying that there was a new HIV variant that was found. And I'm posing this particularly to you now because you mentioned the HIV word. Now we had a fantastic show last year in December when with World's HIV Day, where we spoke extensively about HIV. But this new variant that has just been discovered, is that cause for concern?
Well, it will be cause for concern because, as you might know or might not know, is that we're continuously studying the virus. So we're looking at its impact on the antiretroviral drugs that we're using. So if we find that perhaps it's resistant to the drugs that we're currently giving to the patients, then it will be very good for us to understand that, because then it means we'll need to change the treatment that we're providing to our communities or to our patients. So that's the one part of it. And obviously, secondly, it's the transmission. As you have seen with COVID, that the different variants once they have evolved, their multiplication or how they are spread from one individual to another changes as well. So the understanding of the pathogen itself is very crucial along those lines.
Luleka, I want to bring you
Yes.
into the conversation. Tell us about the work you do and how this impacts the work in STIs.
Oh, okay. Hey, and we work with young people, eh? Those ones, they're very curious and they want to experiment a lot. So, and like I said, we work with young people. And initially, when Love Life started, it was an HIV prevention organization. But as we got deeper into it, there were other factors also that we had to consider. So, as much as we are an HIV prevention organization, but we also have other programs that we run alongside HIV prevention itself. And we use different methods because we're working with different communities, and what works for Khayelitsha might not work for Mitchell's Plain. And when it comes to STIs, I'll share a story with there was a young girl that came into, I'm not going to mention the facility, and she had Watts, and it had been for quite a while, but she went to the clinic for contraceptives, not for the STI that she had. And through the screening process, then the nurse picked up that no, but you also have an STI, you tested positive, and I need to make sure that I thoroughly check you so that I can prescribe medication that you need to use, and also give you a letter so that you can do sort of like a referral to the partners that you are currently sleeping with. And she was aware that she has these Watts, but the boyfriend said she enjoys sex more when she has Watts because it massages the penis. And because she wanted to satisfy this boyfriend, she went to an extent where she thought, maybe I can, sit for so long before I can go to the clinic for help, because I want to keep him. I don't want him to think that I don't love him enough. So I'm going to compromise. And you are shocked to hear such things where a young girl would be willing to compromise her health because she wants to prove to a boy that he truly loves him. So, and those situations, as someone who's a bit older, you might judge how they handle such situations because, you come from a generation where you knew self-worth, you negotiated safe sex and all of those things. And really, they are more vulnerable because of the backgrounds where they come from. Even at home, we don't talk about such things. So the information, the decisions, the choices that the young person would then make are not as informed. And also with the information that you might put out there, I'll make an example of the theta. Someone else might not interpret it the way it's supposed to be, and maybe that is why sometimes we are more on the face-to-face interaction, where someone can also have an opportunity to ask questions if they are not clear about the information, because the information is there, and we encourage them to go to facilities without being sick, without any symptoms. Just go there for information, because we believe that if you have the information, then it will prevent you from getting to a stage where you are sick and you are there because you need medication and all of those things. So it's when it comes to STIs, even if you were to ask, do you know of any types of STIs? Just randomly ask a young person, you'll pick up that they know that there's STIs, others are still calling it STDs. And
Like
Elokshin, where I come from, yes, like you, where I come from, they don't even call it STDs, they call it a drop. No, I have it drop, I have it drop. So, and they are not curious enough to find out other different types of this drop. And what happens when I get it? What are the symptoms? What should I do? As a result, they would go maybe to a pharmacy and buy antibiotics and think that they are treating themselves, but they are making the whole situation worse, and I could go the whole day, giving you stories of our encounters with the facilities where we work, where you'd only find one male randomly sitting at the clinic, most of the time you'll find that people that are accessing these facilities are young females, which it is a problem, because you are at this facility, you are taking care of your health, but you're going back to the same young man who's yes, who has not been treated for, and you can never be sure that this person is only sleeping with you. And we are always saying, if you're sleeping with Usipo and Usipo is sleeping with three others, it means you are sleeping with the other three as well. So the best way really, it would be for you to, if you are currently engaging in sexual intercourse, use a condom, because you can be on IDEP or you can be on all these types of contraceptives, but if you're not using a condom, at the end of the day, others, they just prevent a pregnancy. But with the condom, you can be sure that you will not fall pregnant as a young girl, which then at the end of the day leads to you dropping out of school, having a responsibility of taking care of a child, and you're still a child yourself. You are in high school, your future is looking bright, but because of this pregnancy now, everything else needs to change. And at home, it's a whole lot of a situation as well, where the parents are currently struggling taking care of you. So if you're bringing in a child, because it was Valentine's, 30 seconds later there was a child, 30 seconds pleasure, and then all of a sudden you find yourself being a parent.
Responsibility.
Exactly.
And never mind the responsibility, the debt that comes with it.
It's a lot, it's a lot. And you would talk about how females, and and I think this is why a lot of our young males would feel that they are neglected a bit. It is because, and I always say when I'm encouraging young girls to stay in school, is that even if the same boy that impregnated you is in the same class as you, no one can tell. There are no symptoms. There's nothing in the forehead written that this one is currently going to be a father, but with you, there's a whole lot of changes. You might lose weight, you might gain weight, you might be sick, and also you start showing, and you'll be put out of school, or you'll yourself decide that you're no longer going to attend because maybe you are being mocked, you're embarrassed because you're still young. The society as well, society can be very judgmental instead of being helpful. So as much as, yes, equally we are all at risk, but young girls are more vulnerable and more exposed to such, where the boy will continue and they will maybe even graduate. And when you decided high school, I'm just going to stop and focus on my child, the next thing, you are no longer his type. They want someone who's equally as educated, so as much as it was just a Valentine's Day sex, 30 seconds done, it has such consequences that it changes your entire life as a young girl. Things that you did not expect would happen, they start happening. People start pulling out. You no longer have the same circle of friends because no one wants to be associated with teenage pregnancy. Others, they even say, I don't want to be counted as stats, Yeah, so it does leave a negative flag.
Luleka, while you're talking, you are making, I don't even want to take notes because I'm not going to keep up with the amount of questions that I have for you now. Dumi, I want to ask you, do you want to comment on what Luleka has just said, and or maybe add to that? I see that we have some comments on our Facebook page that's coming through, and I want to welcome every viewer that's on our Facebook page, and thank you for the courage of asking the questions on something where a lot of people choose to stay anonymous. But I'm going to bring those questions in later in the conversation. But Dumisile, I want to ask you, I want you to add to what Luleka has said, because you're sitting with a clinical background. She is sitting with a face-to-face. You are looking at the stats, the science. Talk to us about that.
Yes, I think your conversation came at the right time this week. I'm sure if you are aware, Louise, it's Condom and STI Awareness Week. So we're trying to raise awareness around sexually transmitted infections as well as promote the use of condoms. So what Lulega has just alluded to is so true and correct. I mean, we're seeing really high rates of STIs amongst young girls, which is worrying. And I think the other big factor for us is the issue that most of the infections are asymptomatic, which is why we're calling them infections, because most people will not even be aware that they are infected. So they will still be engaging in an unprotected sex, and in that way infecting their partners. So the cycle just continues, that as she was saying, that if you are sleeping with one person, you're aware that you might be sleeping with all the other partners that they have. So if you are infected, then there's a possibility that you will be infecting 3 or 4 more other people in the same cycle or in that sexual network. So it's important that we actually raise this, because in South Africa, we do not have testing available per se. So you cannot present to a clinic to say, please test me for sexually transmitted infections. So it's syndromically managed based on what symptoms you present with. So as Lulega alluded, for instance, if you have warts, you would present to a clinic and they will advise you accordingly. Or if you have VDROP, which is mostly either a vaginal discharge or a urethral discharge, they will then manage you with the possible causes of that discharge. And now there are multiple, as I said, that you have your bacterial as well as your viral or parasitic infections that can cause any of those. But we do not look specifically at the clinic, what is it that has caused the drop. We will treat you for all the possible pathogens that can cause the discharge. Now, in our center, what we do is we look at whether the same causes are still occurring in our communities. And in that way, we ensure that the treatment that you will get at a health facility is still directed to the right pathogens. And in that way, ensuring that people are treated correctly and accordingly. But obviously, as Lulega was saying, it is a challenge to get our males into the clinic, to get even young girls into the clinic, and to even identify when, because most people don't even identify when they have an abnormal discharge. So they will sit with a discharge that is abnormal. And in that way, also, if you have these infections, they can actually have very dangerous repercussions. You could have infertility later on in life. You could have lower abdominal pain, or even, some people will suffer that the infection can go right through their bodies in having disseminated infection. So it is important, as we are raising awareness today, that people are aware of these infections, that sometimes you might not have symptoms, but when you do have symptoms, please present to your local clinic, because these are treatable, except obviously for your viral infections, which you might not have a cure for, but you can still manage the symptoms.
Manage it. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Ladies, a lot of what you've said had a particular reference to our young people. Mm-hmm. But Luleka, when you started speaking of warts now, it got me going, because I legally cannot be classified as a youth anymore. You can see here about the gray hair. And I had a conversation with a friend of mine that she's almost my age. She's not a young person anymore. Mm-hmm. And she's always never had anybody in her life. Mm-hmm. And about a year and a half ago, she met somebody. And about 3 months ago, she fell pregnant from this guy. So she sorted. So, in her life, this is the best thing that could happen to her. Mm-hmm. So she goes for her first gynae visit. And the gynae says to her, but you've got warts. Mm. And the reason why your wart thing now triggered my mind is, so how would she have warts if she's never been with somebody else? So, and I mean, there's a lot of women that are sitting there and going, no, it can't be. It can't be. This is just, I have a wart in my face. If you look under my boobs, I have that where my bra strap is. So I'm assuming that that's just the way I am. If I look at my mom, I can see she's got moosies all over. So is that a trigger warning? Is that something that all women should be looking out for? Or is that just an anomaly?
Sometimes other things are just not sexually related. and sometimes others are, which is why we always advise that if you see something or you're uncomfortable down there, instead of using Google, rather you go and consult. Go to a clinic. If you are someone who can afford a doctor's visit, go to a gynecologist. Get someone who's a professional to do a proper assessment and diagnosis before you can decide that no, mina ekaya, everyone has what. So it could be that I took it from my mother, or because we all don't want to associate with such things. So immediately when you start picking up that there's something that might be an STI, you would want to maybe relate it to something else. For instance, when you have flu and you have a sore on your lip, the minute someone starts making remarks about the sore, you start explaining yourself. No, I have flu. This has nothing to do with an STI. And you start becoming defensive. And that is why we would always advise all the time, go to the clinic. At the clinic, the services are free, and that is why we always start with go to the clinic instead of going to the doctor. But if you're someone who can afford a doctor's visit, then you go to a doctor, because we cannot look at you and decide that what you have now is this. You need a proper diagnosis. Yeah.
Yes, and just to add, sorry, Louise,
Yes,
just to add there.
Please add.
I enjoy this because the cause of the warts can be due to human papilloma virus. I think most people are aware of it. So, I mean, we have a vaccine now that is being given to children or young girls around the age of between 9 and 12. So we have oncogenic, those that cause cancer, the types of HPV that can cause cancer, and the ones that are non-oncogenic that can cause warts. So these can be sexually transmitted. So it comes back to the herpes that she was talking about, the cold blisters. So these are caused by herpes simplex type 1. Now that is normally around your mouth, but you can also get herpes simplex type 2, which is sexually transmitted and appears around your genital area. And now, because of oral sex, you can actually have these reversed, because now you're introducing your oral cavity to your genital area. So when people get scared, something that they should worry about, because you can actually shed the virus without having the ulcer. So if you are engaging in oral sex and you're not using protection, you can actually transmit the virus that was sitting in your mouth, causing you the fever blisters, as we call them, or flu sores, transmit them to your genital area. And once they are there, they can always reappear now as genital ulcers that will necessitate treatment. And these cannot be cured. They can just be managed. So once you get the herpes virus, or you get like HPV, we know that the oncogenic ones, they will result in cervical cancer or any other cancers around your genital area. And with herpes as well, you'll continuously get resurgence depending on your immune response. So I'll end there without complicating things further.
No, that was such an amazing answer, because even from what Luleka said previously, I mean, as women, when we have our little sessions like we are having now, you will find a lady saying, "Oh, I've suddenly got an itch," and somebody will say, "So what do you wash your underwear with?" And the other person will say, "No, I only use Omo." And the next person will say, "No, but you should not wash your undergarments with Omo. Rather use Lux." But it just shows you how much of what is serious we allow our friends to make the diagnosis of, when actually it is something that should be treated. I'm looking at our Facebook comments, and it's so nice to have interaction from our viewers. Lindy Gumede says, "I'm listening with my son." Very interesting. So Dumi and Luleka, how amazing is this? We are going to change one man's life in terms of how he's going to treat his lady going forward. Lindy, well done to you for bringing your son on board.
Yes, that is great.
Mashape says, how can we improve the knowledge about STIs among our youth without the whole scientific baggage making them feel stupid? Because our kids, they don't want to be taught. I have a 22-year-old in my house, and there's nothing that I can say to her that she doesn't have a better answer for. I mean, like, really, she was the mom in a previous life, and I became her child overnight. When she turned 21, the roles were reversed. So how do we improve the knowledge about STIs amongst our youth? Any one of you can go.
You know, with our background now, I'll specifically be talking about Black people. When it comes to sex and sexuality at home, we don't talk really about those things. You'll maybe be fortunate if you have a cousin who's at the same age or a bigger sister who's more open to such conversations. But, more parents are still, they are slowly getting into it, but not fully. And I'll even make an example out of myself. I laughed when I was doing an introspection. I'm like, no, but how? Because I talk with a lot of young people. A day, I even lost count with the engagement that I have with young people. But when my daughter suddenly started asking these questions, I kept saying, no, go to Google. Yeah, go to Google. It will explain it better. Now, I was so uncomfortable. Then I started understanding where other parents really come from. Yeah, because the fear is now you're starting with the questions. What will follow will be the action.
What is Gogo going to say to her? Gogo's going to say to her, you too big for your boots, go play.
And she came back from Google with a even bigger word to say, please explain. I was like, no, go back to Google again. Because now the fear, it's when you start to see that the interest is more now on getting to understand the body and how it works, and you think probably they will now start engaging in these sexual activities, and you don't really want them to. You want to delay them, and maybe up until tertiary, where they can make informed decisions. They take information, they process it better. And really, this is the time where they take the information and they process it better, because with them, they take the information, but they don't take it as it is. They question it. Now, if you can just open, the discussion, allow them to ask questions without being defensive. Sometimes it's not even a problem if you refer them to something else. Maybe say, when I come back from work, I'll start at the clinic and I'll come back with a pamphlet that has more information. It becomes a period where you both learn new things, because these things, they evolve. I'll make an example with STI, STD. You will think you have all the information, but there's new information as well. So if maybe parents can be more open, and I even advise others to start with an LO, session, where what were you doing in an LO class? There's a lot of tasks there that you can do together. You do those tasks together. You allow them to ask you questions when they respond to some of those tasks, and you engage. And I feel that is when you'll also be at control of what they will then be engaging in, because step by step, as you are engaging and new questions come, you have sort of like an idea of where they are currently, because most of the time they ask questions based on things that they want to do, but they are unsure. So now, they want to be sure before they can get into it. So at least then, you still have control of, and when they are still in school, primary school and high school, they are still manageable. When they are in tertiary, you start losing control a bit. So that is
hormones also, besides what they hear.
Their brain is functioning differently at that time, and they have mobile devices now. allow them to do their research, come back to you, show you things, and you engage more. And even accompany them sometimes when they want to go to the clinic. And when we see a lot of parents accompanying these young girls going to the clinic for termination of pregnancy, and this child could have been accompanied for something that would have prevented the pregnancy in the first, you see. So being involved more, it helps. Sometimes you don't even have to engage in the actual conversation, but the activities that you would do at home, they would lead to such talks where now it doesn't become uncomfortable. Because if you tell yourself, I'm coming back from work and I'm going to talk about sex with my girls to do and it doesn't always go well. It doesn't always go well. Also with the emotions, with you wanting to be in control of the conversation, and what you say goes. With those type of conversation, what you say does not necessarily go. Because you'll find that they're even exposed to more terminology, different types of sex as well. When now you'll be like, what? You do it standing in your head. What are you talking about? Such things. So when you'll think you have all the information, but they are more advanced because of the technology and the friends. And that is why you need to allow, such conversations to take place at home so that you're able to say, no, this one, there's a bit of, it's a myth. This is how it's supposed to be. We had a case of a young girl that fell pregnant and said, my friend said, if I have sex standing up, the sperm will go down. So what goes up must come down. So I won't fall pregnant, and it's not true. And sometimes, they don't even know the difference between a semen and a sperm. But this is someone that is already sexually active, so they're engaging in things that they don't even fully understand themselves. So for you to just open that platform where you talk openly about sex, because whether you like it or not, it happens. And I always say, you are at work, 6, 7, 8 hours, and they are at school, they come back earlier, and you can never be sure what happens in between that time. I always find my child at home when I come back. Yes, they know what time you come back. So obviously they'll make sure that they're at home at that time. But in between that time, what happens? So if you're not talking to your child about these things, someone else is. And that someone else might be giving all the wrong information. So it's better when it's coming from you and you know that you're giving all the right information and hoping that, they make good use or they make informed decisions based on the conversations that you might have. It's not necessarily this, the results all the time where they'll be making informed decisions because they'll have all the information, but still, engage without using a condom, without using any type of contraceptives, but they are well aware of these things. So there's no formula really to say this is how you should parent, but be open to such conversations. And
and I know that especially government and healthcare organizations gets a lot of flack from the ordinary citizens because they promote the use of condoms.
Yes.
And I mean, from our discussion now, we realize that a condom, not only does it potentially stop you from falling pregnant, but it also has huge health benefits for all of us. Now, one of the comments that came through on our Facebook page says, but you can see the way people resist and forget their face masks. The same thing is happening with a condom because we are in a society that resists safe measures to protect ourselves because we don't really understand how transmitting of infections messes up our communities. And isn't that so? I mean, ultimately, in a perfect world, we would love to be able to say to young people, yes, sex is natural and people do that. And we'd love you to have sex when you are emotionally mature to deal with what you are doing and the consequences thereof. But we also know in the world that we're living in, hormones for some kids start
Take
kicking
over.
in at 9 years old. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's just not something that you control. I have a fraternity of friends that are all teachers. Luleka, I can understand exactly with what you are saying, that a lot of these things don't even happen at home. It's what starts at school, because kids just can't keep their hands of each other because I really, 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 really like that person. So condoms is and will be a measure of protection, whether it makes us as parents feel uncomfortable or not.
No, that's definitely,
But
that's very true.
but how then? Because now I think the conversation needs to be lifted to the generation before. The generation that never spoke about these things, the generation that hid a lot of things, the generation that said, don't keep yourself too big for your boots. Why are you standing smiling with that boy? Come get inside. So what is the real message to them? Because I'm sure in our generation, there's probably a lot more STIs going around than we would care to admit. Do you want to weigh in on this as an answer?
Yes, I think the use of condoms, it's not, as the person who wrote on Facebook has said, it's just like masks. It's something unnatural. And it's not something that is easy for people to just engage in. So it does take a lot of courage from parents, from teachers, from people who engage with young people, to say that condoms at this point in time are our way of protecting ourselves. Whether you are having oral sex, whether you are having anal sex or vaginal sex, a condom is the way to go. But we also understand that it is not easy. So how do we make it easy for people to access the condoms? One, because they need to be available for you to be able to use them. And two, to actually negotiate the use of a condom. Because I can have the condom, but in terms of saying to my partner, we need to use a condom, that's another challenge for me, because I can be able to, as a young woman, to say, I want to protect myself, and I want to protect my partner, because it's a two-way conversation that we should be having. You don't know where I've been. I don't know where you've been. So when I'm using a condom, I'm not just protecting myself, but I'm protecting you. But that conversation can also be difficult for young women to try and negotiate the use of a condom. So these are other skills that we need to be able to teach our women on how do we negotiate a condom. Because it might be easy for a man to say, let's use a condom. But in some instances also it might not be easy, because the lady might be thinking, oh, you want to use a condom with me? Why? Because you're thinking I'm dirty, you're thinking I've got an STI, you're thinking I have HIV. And the stigma that surrounds those diseases, and it does not necessarily mean that if you have those diseases, you are now 30, as people would have previously looked at it. It just means you got an infection at some point in your life with one of your sexual partners. And in order to protect your current sexual partner, you need to use a condom. Unless we have a battery of tests that we can be able to do to say, okay, we've tested for everything, you are now clear. You can be able to go on and have sex without a condom. But that is not the case. So in order for us to be able to protect ourselves, let's use a condom. And we need to teach people how to access condoms too, and how to negotiate the use of a condom, because that's also important. And as you rightfully say, with the older generation, the conversations we have with our kids, they should start early and make it's not a threat, because I think the other thing that we tend to do is to put HIV and other sexually transmitted infections as a threat, or pregnancy as a threat. It's not. It's just how life is that if you do this is what's going to happen.
That's a
And in
consequence.
order,
Yes.
so yes, there's a consequence. So in order to prevent that, this is what we need to put in place. So in most instances, when we have these conversations with our children or with youngsters, who would say, you must use a condom, because if you don't use a condom, you will fall pregnant, or you'll get HIV, or you will get STIs. But it's not. We understand that you are sexually active, and in order for you to protect yourself, use a condom, and how? What are your, because I think it is important for us to understand the person, where they are coming from. As I said, that if we're unable to negotiate the use of a condom, we can have them lying in boxes and we can
Yeah.
issue them out at
Yeah.
clinics. But
Yeah.
if I'm unable to negotiate it with my partner, it's of
It's
no use.
useless.
It's
Yes.
useless. So I'm issuing it out, I'm piling it in my boot or in my car or in my bag, but I cannot even talk to my partner about how to use it. So these are conversations that we should be having with young people. We should be having with our children. And even as adults, when we sit, as you say, with, I mean, even in our age group, as you say, rightfully so, that sometimes we find it even difficult to ask the question, I have an itch, or there is something that I don't understand. What is happening? Do I need to go and consult, or what do I do? So it becomes even difficult to even converse about these things within our own social networks, where we're thinking, we're feeling, we're comfortable. These are my friends, I'm
Yes.
comfortable to discuss different things with them. But it's very difficult for me to even say, okay, I've met this guy, and how do I even start talking about a
Yes.
condom? Or how
Yes.
do I even tell him that, okay, I'm HIV positive? Or how do I even start to talk about STIs, or that I have herpes? Because, like herpes, for instance, you can get it with your first sexual encounter and not have any of the ulcers coming up until at some point. So now you have this new relationship. Now suddenly you're getting ulcers or sores. How do you speak to your partner now about using a condom or not using a condom? And how do you explain that now with this partner you have sores that you never had before? So these are discussions that are we continuously need to have, and take out the stigma. I think the moral, or our, what we were trying to get to, is that we need to remove the stigma from STIs, just like we've removed it from HIV, to say people are able to converse freely about HIV. We should also be able to converse freely about STIs, whether with our children, with our parents, if you're a child or a young person, or even with our friends, to be able to discuss these and be able to get proper information if you need to, or be referred to the right person if you need clinical advice.
Ladies, there's two pertinent questions that I do want to ask that has come through the Facebook line. Our time, we're having this discussion, and our time is running, but I do just quickly want to steer the conversation in a different direction before we come back to those questions. And that is, we cannot have an important discussion in 2022 without talking about COVID-19. Have we seen a change in the numbers of STIs since COVID-19? And why do you think it is? And any one of you can go first.
Oh my God. They went up, and others are even joking about it to say, yeah, but we were on lockdown, people were at home. How did these numbers go up,
Yeah.
And even the numbers of teenage pregnancy, they also went up. So I think maybe let me go back to the person that commented to say, it's even difficult to get people to wear a mask. So even though we were on lockdown, people, they stole time, away from home. They would sneak around, and that is why there were those videos circulating of people being told, get inside, do this, do that. So really, some people didn't comply. So they took it as free time on holiday, to do whatever you want. You're not expected to report to work in the morning. You're not waking up to go to school the next morning. So, why not use this time? Others, they even said, I want to be locked while I'm elsewhere. So it comes midnight and the lockdown starts, I don't want to be at home, because I want to be with my boyfriend. So a lot of these infections, they went up. And along with teenage pregnancy as well, it went up very, very high up in numbers. And I think we neglected some of them because the focus was now on COVID. There's other people also that were no longer taking treatment as they should, So maybe we were too shaken with COVID that we forgot about everything else and we focused solely on COVID. And which is why some of us were still at work, even though others were on lockdown, because we had to still remind people that as much as there's COVID, but there's still, other things. Things did not just stop, gave time to COVID. Everything else is still the same. If you're on medication, you should be taking your medication. If you are engaging on sex, it should be safe. Also, we're making sure that we're distributing condoms as well. And it was a bit difficult to do so because of the strict, regulations and all. But, we tried where we could, and we kept young people engaged on virtual activities where we would have webinars and we would have dialogues, we would have, host tournaments and do all these things just to keep them occupied, keep them away from thinking sex all the time. But unfortunately, people always find a way. Even if now you would say we're closing down all the shibins, we're no longer giving people will find alcohol, so they really do find ways of doing things, even though you might say, I'm restricting you, I'm not giving you this anymore. So the numbers did go up from some of the facilities where I work. Yes, it went
Dumi,
up.
did you find the same on your side?
So on our side, we haven't looked at the effect of COVID-19 per se, but I think from the data that's provided from other countries, we could see actually either way. So you could see some countries saw an increase based on the fact that the people who were infected might not have had an opportunity to present at a local facility for treatment, in that way infecting other people. Or in the cases where they saw a decrease in the numbers, it's because they were not screening and they were not testing. But also remember that if you have lockdown, all these other pubs, clubs, and swinging clubs and all of that high-risk areas were closed down or shut down. So you could actually have reduced the opportunities where people could have unprotected, safe, or high-risk type of sexual activity. So it would be interesting to actually see the actual numbers in all the different sites, because you might find in other sites that you might see a decrease, but it's purely because they were focusing on COVID and focusing on those patients that had chronic illnesses. But if you had an STI, you would also maybe not even want to think, I'll just get better and not go to the clinic or present yourself to a clinic. In that way, the numbers will drop. But actually, it's because we're not counting correctly, or people were not coming through because of all the other restrictions. So I think the numbers will be mixed because of all these various reasons. And we've seen this worldwide, that you see in some countries, you will see this reduction. In some countries, you will see an increase. But it's because of these factors that might not be a true reflection of what has transpired during the epidemic. Yeah.
Thank you, ladies. I do as our last session of questions want to go back and no judgment against the comments that were made. It simply again just confirms what we say about what we don't see. We often try and make off as nothing, but what we do see, especially when it comes to superficial things, are important. So both these questions have to do with warts. The first question says, I've developed small warts on my face, and I thought it was genetical since my granny had the same. Could this be classified as an STI? Then the second one says, please elaborate on the difference between warts versus skin tags. Most seem to think that these are the same and may overlook the seriousness of the matter based on that misconception. So both ladies, we're going on 55 minutes already. Can you believe it? Time flies when you're having fun. But could we quickly, just concisely, give an answer or give people an idea of what to do? I mean, I'm sitting with tags and lots. You can see there's one that you can see, and I've got a lot of them that are worrying me. Not worrying me because they irritate me when I wash my face and I feel it. But I'm sure, because for dark-skinned people, this is what we have. So is this something that I should be worried about, or do I need to start checking myself? I'm going to give both of you an opportunity.
So
I'm
for
going to
me,
give it
I
to
think,
Dumi.
yes, okay. I think we have stressed this, that you do need to consult, because especially with warts, you could think that it's something minor, but it can actually easily and quickly develop into skin cancer. So you do need to consult. So the warts that we worry about are those genital warts, which are caused by human papillomavirus, the non-oncogenic types. So these are not cancerous, which are different types from the ones that were used to that causes cancer. So if you have genital warts, you definitely need to seek treatment to be able to get those sorted. And they can be removed. There's various opportunities for treatment to remove them. The ones on the skin, on your face, please have them checked, because they might not be sexually transmitted, obviously, but they might result in skin cancer, or there might be something that's underlying. Do not just let them be. Have a dermatologist or your general practitioner have a look at them, so that you ensure that you are not sitting with something, because if it develops into skin cancer, it can easily get out of hand if you are not careful or you are not consulting with your practitioner.
Luleka, do you have something to add?
No. Nothing to add.
Ladies, in closing, Tammy said there is a budget in South Africa for school health services. What is it used for? And if it's not used to supply information and protection to our schools, this gives us a united voice to demand back those services to our communities, so that we can engage like this to find a way forward, so that the right action can be taken to stop the lack of services, especially when it comes to health, sex education. I mean, I just saw in the last 2 days newspaper headlines where parents are up in arms because grade 4s are now starting to get sex education, and they feeling like, leave my child alone. They should be playing. They shouldn't be hearing about it. So those are the realities we are facing. But also with the foods we eat and the way kids are growing up faster, I mean, I think newborn babies can do my grade 10 algebra that I did at school in 1980. So I mean, it's just a new way of living. So use that as also a way to pull together your final comments for this evening, please. Dumi, can we start with you?
Yes, I think it's important that we gear our education at the right, the right amount of education at the right age. So we shouldn't bombard children with information. So as they are growing up, continuously engaging with them and give them information that is right for their age. As they're developing, they are able to assimilate, and they're able to interact and digest that information for the right age. So that is very important. And I think when we go into sexual health, it should include STIs and HIV, that we teach our children that these are the repercussions. This is what happens. How do you protect yourself? It's not just about pregnancy. It's not just about HIV, but there's other STIs that you might not even see that can affect you later on in life. And as we've always said, please, if you see something that is abnormal, you have a discharge, you have an ulcer, you have warts, consult with your general practitioner, consult at your local healthcare facility, so that you can get the appropriate treatment that is needed. And let's use condom. We can be able to enjoy a healthy sex life even with condoms. Thank you.
Thank you, Dumisile. Luleka, putting that together, and final closing words from you.
Final closing, more emphasis on self-love, low self-esteem as well. It plays a huge role in how other young girls fall victim to peer pressure and ending up doing things that they don't necessarily feel comfortable doing, but because they don't even understand the changes that are happening in their bodies at that time. They're not sure whether because when you transition, from being an adolescent to being a youth, other things, other transitions, you can see the nose getting bigger, pimples, and that does not mean that you're ugly. Self-love, and I always say it starts with self. If you don't love yourself, then you will allow whatever other people from outside to just bring in, and you will accept and you will receive, and you will think that is the only way. But if you love yourself, that's where you start, negotiating some things because they don't really speak with your values. That's when you'll start saying, no, not for me. I don't want to do it because, this is what I want to get at the end of the day. So yeah, we can get to a stage where we use a condom, engaging safely. But really, if you don't love yourself enough, you will not even see the importance of using that condom. You will use the condom because other people are saying you must use a condom. Understand yourself, understand your goals, your upbringing, your values, and where you want to see yourself in life. And, this goes both ways, not only for young girls, but for young boys as well. And I
Yes.
even say for young boys, do to other people what you wish other people would do to your sister, other people would do to your mother. Treat yourself in a manner where you would also want to be treated, so that other people can learn from you how to treat you with love, with respect, and other things will follow. Other things will follow. And where you feel you are not sure, you are confused, always ask. There's no such thing as a stupid question. And I always tell people, no one was ever born knowing things. That is why you are taught how to
Then,
walk. You are taught how to, everyone is taught things. So if someone else knows, it does not make you a fool or make you someone who's a bit slow or stupid if you don't understand. Always ask, always engage, be curious,
engage.
but love yourself enough to know that other things are a no-go area, you know.
What an amazing show. Such wonderful insights and knowledge that have been imparted. And you know what? All it is sometimes taking those things that make us uncomfortable and just put it in our pocket and push through the discomfort, because we're going to find a point where the light is going to go on and you're going to find, but actually the discomfort that I felt probably came from somebody that gave me misinformation. Another point that came out of tonight's show definitely is that the 14th of February is not the only day to show love to others and to ourselves. Let's continue making sure that we build a South Africa that's full of love, but that is free from sexually transmitted infections. From me, Louise, it was great hosting this session of SAITA Straight Talk. Till next time, thank you to my panelists and good night.
Bye.